Hello everyone, and this is the long-awaited guide on how to increase your rank in competitive. I want to make it fairly in-depth, which is why I'm doing it in a whole video and not just replying to comments. I'm going to split the video into two sections. The first section is about general information for competitive, how you can maybe improve with techniques not used in the game, like stacking with friends and queue dodging, and how this might help you. And the second section will be about stuff you can actually do in-game, like grouping up. Obviously there's more to it than that, but I'll get into that later. Because there's quite a lot to cover, I'll put times in the description that you can skip to if you don't want to listen to all of this. And I will be droning on a lot, like seriously a lot at some point, so I highly recommend doing this. But anyway, I hope you find this helpful and I'll get right to it. Firstly, I'm just going to say what my competitive climb has been like so far, so you kind of know where this information is coming from and how it's worked in my experience. I'll ignore Season 1 because they had hero stacking and coin flips, and it's basically not applicable at all to any of the seasons after Season 1. So in Season 2 I placed at around 2,800 in Platinum and got a season high of 3,750 in Masters. This season, in Season 3, I got placed at around 3,200 in Diamond, to have a season high of 4,200 in Grandmaster. All seasons I've been in top 500. While making this video at the moment, I think I'm around 350th in the EU. So that's where I am, and now you know the source of this information and its reliability. So this begins the first of two sections of the video. I'll kick this off by talking about placement matches. This is the only part of the video that I'm not 100% sure on, so please take this with a grain of salt. This is how I think it works. Let's say you get a new account like you would with your Smurf. There's this hidden number associated with your account called your MMR, and you never see this number, but you can treat it like your skill rating. This exists so you can match up with people of the same skill outside of competitive, such as in quick play and arcade. So for the first 25 levels where you can't play competitive, you have this hidden MMR related to your account. And in fact that stays with you the whole time, but it's not very relevant after the 25 levels because then you have your competitive SR to go off of. So skip forward 25 levels and you start your placements. So for most of these placements you'll be going against people of your MMR. However, let's say you win your first 4 placements, so you've gone 4-0 without losing a game. Around this point the system will try to put you against harder opponents because you're on a win streak. Then you'll lose some and you get easier opponents. So if you go into your placements, you win 5 and you lose 5, you'll get an SR rating that is quite similar to the MMR you first went in with. If you win 10 and lose 0, because you've had harder and harder opponents as you go, you'll end up with a much higher SR than the MMR that you first went in with. And then same goes for losing 10. If you lose all 10, then you'll have a much lower SR than what your hidden MMR was. So when people blame their rating on the bad placement matches they had, it could well be the case that you could have had trolls every single game, in which case Blizzard should make the sample size bigger, maybe 25 placement games, so you don't get as much of that. But in general that won't happen. You won't have a troll every single game, and it might just affect one. But in general you are expected to get an SR similar to your hidden MMR. So it's also down to how you perform in those first 25 levels, not just those 10 games, so don't try to blame it on just that. So this could be considered common knowledge, but in case you didn't know, win streaks are a huge part of your rating. At about 5 wins in a row you start to get an increased SR gain per win, and it's probably a good sign that you're playing well, so you might want to keep playing until you lose. Conversely, you lose more and more if you get on a loss streak. So the message to take from this is just to stop playing if you lose at least 3 games in a row. After my 3rd loss, I'll stop. I'll have a break, maybe as small as 5 minutes, just to clear your head. Maybe just have a break, go back in with a fresh mind afterwards, and you might see a difference. If you keep playing with that same mindset that you were losing on, then you'll probably lose even more. And maybe you were just playing badly. Maybe you just need a break and then you'll come back and you'll start playing a bit better. But that can be the difference between gaining 500 SR and losing 500 SR. You don't want to continue those loss streaks, and you do want to continue those win streaks. This leads on to the next section, which is Q dodging. If you play a game and you have a blatant troll on your team, you might not want to play with them again. In fact, you definitely not want to play with them again. So at the end of the game, what you can do is you can Q dodge them. You can wait 5 minutes for them to find a game, and then you can start searching, and likelihood is that you'll find a game without them in it. I'd also encourage you to report any trolls, but be 100% that they are trolling. Don't report someone just because they pick Widowmaker. They might genuinely be trying to play her even if they aren't doing well. Only report them if they're suiciding, if they're going AFK, and just obviously griefing. They might just be playing a hero and they might be playing them badly, and you don't want to report them for that because that's just innocence. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not maliciously ruining your game. At higher levels, you see a lot of Q dodging because people want to avoid good players, which is kind of frowned upon because they've been matched to you in a balanced system, but you're still trying to avoid them just because they're beating you. Obviously you can do this if it's not balanced, such as if you're in a 6 stack and you're rated 3000 and you get put against another 6 stack which is rated 4000, you'll obviously want to keep dodging that group so that you avoid a losing streak, and it's not fun for anyone in a very one-sided game such as that. Now just a small section on trolls and smurfs in general. As I said just a moment ago, report the trolls if they're griefing, and it's a similar rule for smurfs. There's actually nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with having a smurf, so don't report them just because they're using one. However, when a smurf is purposely throwing by griefing, then report them. People might just want to do this because they can lower their SR and then play with friends, or because they actually want to ruin other people's fun and it's not their main account, so they don't care what happens to their rating. Some people like doing that. But yes, please, if there are people griefing, then report them. We've all come across them in games, and while it might not do anything immediately to report them, it's the best we have on Xbox anyways. So even if they're on the enemy team and they've given you a free win, please still report them. Let's just try and make the community just that little less toxic, just by doing that. Now we move on to the second section of the video, which will have far more tips involved and in-game techniques. You should get a lot more information from here which you yourselves can actually use, rather than me talking about how to report people. First on this list is the big one, grouping up. If you haven't already, turn your kill feed on. Your whole game should be based off team fights, 6v6. If I see in the kill feed that 2 of my teammates have died, so it's a 4v6, none of their team have died, then the 4 of you should just back off, don't go into the choke, and wait for the 2 people that have died on your team to respawn. You have a small chance of winning a 5v6 depending on who's died, but you'll lose a 4v6 almost most of the time. So it's better to group up with the 2 people that have died than for you to just walk in and give them a load of ultimate charge. This is another big point, ultimates. A lot of people don't do this, and it really does help with pushing your SR just that little bit further, and you should really get used to thinking like this. You should think about when all of the people on your team's ults are ready and all of the enemy's team as well. Now you're obviously not going to know the exact percentages of your enemy team, or even your team if they don't let you know when their ult's ready, but you can just based off practice try and guess what their ultimates are. For example, if you've spent about 2 minutes in the game and Lucio hasn't used his ult, you can almost certainly assume that he has his ult ready. So if you're talking to your team, then that's great. I encourage you to do that so that you can let your team know that Lucio has his ult ready and that your team can prepare for that. Then you have to think about how you're going to put this information to use. Let's pretend that you're on a Nubis on attack and you're attacking point B. Your team has 6 ults ready, which is unlikely, but let's say you do. You have 6 ults ready, and you're thinking, great, we'll cap this easily, we'll kill everyone, we'll do a team wipe. But then you'll have to think about if they have a Mercy, maybe their Mercy will have Resurrect. And if they do, that Mercy will probably be hiding near spawn. So maybe if you want to talk to a flanker on your team and try and hunt them down, make sure that they die first. Or get your whole team to focus Mercy, try and find her and kill her so that she can't res. And it's just small things like that on a game, such as knowing when someone's ultimate's ready, that can mean the difference between a win and a loss. So it's so important to keep that information in mind and not just go in for all the kills. The same rules apply for when I'm playing Genji a lot. I'll give you an example. If I'm playing Genji and I have my ult ready, I might want to think about the support ults that they have. If they have a Lucio and a Zenyatta, then I'll want to know if they have their ults ready. Maybe I'll wait for them to use their ults before I use my ult so I can make more use out of my ult. If Zenyatta has his ult, then my ult is basically useless. So I'll try and hunt him down before I use it, and then I can maybe kill the rest of their team with my ult, or just even one or two people. But it's just things like that. If you don't hunt down a vulnerable support like that before you use your ult, then you could have wasted it, and that's more time in game you're going to have to spend grinding ult charge. Sometimes though, you might want to do that. If you know that Zenyatta has his ult ready, then you as Genji might want to use your Dragon Blade just to make sure that their Zenyatta uses his ult. You might want to do this because you have a Zarya on your team and she has a Graviton ready, so she can use her Graviton after you've used your ult, because their Zenyatta will have wasted his ult and they won't have a Transcendence to counter the Graviton. So you can get a team wipe off that maybe. On a similar point, if I have Dragon Blade and Zarya has Graviton, and I know that their Zenyatta has Transcendence, I might wait after Zarya's used her Graviton for Zenyatta to use his Transcendence. I won't want to ult straight away once I hear fire at will, because then I'll have used my ult preemptively and Zenyatta will ult and my ult will be useless. So I'll wait, if just maybe 1 second. If Zenyatta uses his ult, then I won't use my ult. I'll wait for the Transcendence to run out and then I'll go in with Dragon Blade and try and get some picks. You should try throughout the whole game to let your team know what your ultimate's on. Let's say you're Tracer and your Pulse Bomb's on 15%, but Zarya has her ult ready. You'll have to let her know when you're on 15%, just so that she knows not to wait for you, because it will take too long for you to get your ult to synergize together. So you may as well use Zarya ult so she can start charging again quicker, and you might get a team wipe earlier on and get the point quickly rather than waiting for Tracer to get her ult up. Obviously synergy is important in every game. You should think about using Zarya ult with a lot of other ults such as Dragon Blade, Earth Shatter, and Nano Boost, for example, can be used with other ults such as Dragon Blade again, or maybe no ults such as just a normal Winston. Winston Nano Boosted is very tough and can do a lot of damage output. You'll often see me flash the button in games that brings up the list of my team members. This is me checking to see if they have any ultimates ready. If you didn't know already, a blue tick beneath someone's portrait means that they have their ultimate ready, which is quite useful because if the people on your team aren't giving the information of when their ults are ready, you can just check to see if they have that ult ready. It's not as great as knowing their specific percentage, but it will have to do. So just to combine those last 2 points, if 2 of your team have died again, so it's another 4v6 scenario, don't use any ultimates. If there's only 4 of you, then you're really going to struggle to follow up on any ultimates that you do use. So wait for the rest of your team and then think about using them afterwards. If on the other hand you've killed 2 of their team, so now it's a 6v4, you won't want to use your ults. Again, just wait for 6v6s to use ults. If it's a 6v4, then the likelihood is that you'll be able to take on all 4 of them without using any ultimates. You can just use your general abilities and attacks. You won't need ultimates to waste. And then you can use your ultimates in another 6v6 where it might be tougher to kill enemies. Here we go, this is a good one. Medals. Everyone's heard of them. At this point I just want to convey that medals do not mean anything. You really can't take a lot of information from them, and they certainly don't tell you how much you're contributing to the game. You might be gold for damage done and be thinking that you're doing a great job, but actually you're just Junkrat spamming at a Reinhardt shield when you could be switching to soldier to take out that Pharah. You won't get a damage medal for it, but you'll definitely be helping your team out a lot more. So please don't put emphasis on medals. A gold medal can mean something sometimes, but they're certainly not reliable. Just pretend that medals don't exist and try to focus on the gameplay. Now we come to team composition. Firstly, you shouldn't just be a one-trick pony. Try to learn at least one hero from DPS, tank and support, and that's at the very least. You should try and aim for 2 per category. This is so if someone picks your main, you have someone to fall back on. Please don't harass the person who's picked your main to try and switch, because it just lowers your team morale and you won't get to play DPS every single game. If you want to play DPS every single game, then you won't level up. Let's briefly talk about the meta. The meta is just something that high level players need to do because it's assumed that everyone can play the characters very well at that level, and it just comes down to which heroes' imbalances can perform better. It's not mechanical skill. This is why the meta is not important when it comes to games lower on the ladder, because Platinum, Diamond games and lower don't have extreme amounts of skill. You can play whatever you're good at. It is still important to think about counters though. The only exception to this is the 2-2-2 meta, which is 2 tanks, 2 DPS and 2 support. 2-2-2 is always a very safe bet just because it makes the team so well rounded for damage and healing. So don't worry about what the current meta is, just do what you're comfortable with, switch to counters, and if in doubt, go 2-2-2. When I talk about counters, what I mean is choosing heroes that can stop enemy heroes dead in their tracks. For example, at the moment on console, Pharah and Mercy is so strong, so to really make their life difficult you should switch to Soldier, McCree or Zenyatta. A good Pharah might need all 3 of these heroes on the opposite team to counter her. Another example is D.Va. If they have a D.Va, then you can pick Zarya or Roadhog. They both counter her, especially Zarya. Zarya's a hard counter. You would call Roadhog a soft counter because Roadhog doesn't counter her as well, but at the moment D.Va's quite weak and he can hook her, do a lot of damage to her, and then the team can finish her off quite quickly. Try to learn these counters off by heart so that you can adapt quickly in a game situation and not waste too much time on a hero that might not be doing as much as it could be. There are some situations where only one hero counters another. Let's say the enemy team has a Reinhardt. You could say that Reinhardt is a counter to himself. Your team is really going to struggle if you don't have a Reinhardt and they do, because they have a 2000 point shield that needs to be broken before you can do any damage to them, whilst they can just pepper you for free. The last point on team composition is again going back to troll picks. If someone on your team picks Junkrat at the start, or someone not so useful, don't do the same thing and pick Torbjorn, let's say. Again, it just ruins your team morale and you'll end up not having a good game. You should try and work around the person that's picked a bad hero, because then you can still almost have a solid team comp. If you all start trolling and choosing these bad characters, then it's never going to work, but at least you still have a chance of winning if you build a team composition around them. And I think that is about it, so please ask away in the comments if there's anything I've missed out you'd like me to cover. I'm sure there is, I'm very forgetful. I'm very close to 1,000 subs now, so thanks so much for that. The channel has grown so fast, but thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.